Hi everyone, welcome. We're down here in my wormery, preparing to check in on a couple of my worm bins, and they're the ones that you see right up ahead in the black boxes. If you were with me last time, 11 days ago, we made the decision with these systems to give them what we had considered to be their final feeding, and we thought that we would cut them loose on foraging. And I've kind of had a change of heart. So I thought we'd come in here with perhaps one more feeding. And you know why? I'll explain when we get these systems up on the bench. So I'm going to get a glove on, get these systems over onto the table, and we'll regroup there. So let's get to work. Okay, so long story short, since coffee and pumpkin are pretty much the most popular food items in all of my worm bins, all I really wanted was an excuse to come back in here and replace the top coverings. I'm just kidding. That's not the real reason. The real reason is because of something I did in here after our last visit. If you were with me last time, you might remember the way we left these systems was kind of like this. There was no plastic covering here. And what we had done here was we placed a whole bunch of worm chow out in the hopes that we would get the worms to come up and nibble on this stuff. So the worm chow was sprinkled all over the coffee filters that were placed over the feeding. So yeah, we didn't feed down the middle, following suit with what we normally do. We edge fed. And what we threw in there was sort of similar to what I've got for them once again today. And it's kind of a ugly cucumber that I saw dangling on the vine out in my garden, and I thought, I got much better looking ones than that. Let's just give that one to the worms. It's not even been in the freezer. I just picked it off the plants. And my idea was to come back in here and set them up with another feeding very similar to what they got last time, which was going to be just more cucumber. That's all they got last time. And the cucumber was wrapped up in paper. And my idea was to use some of this soaked paper over here to wrap the cucumber in, and then these pieces of the top covering paper that are still holding up pretty good, combined with those neat pieces that have the coffee and pumpkin images on them, those can come out here as replacement top coverings. And since I don't have coffee for them today or coffee filters, I just figured that these two pieces of paper here could become our feeding zone indicators. Because one thing that I did do, besides coming in to put the plastic on there to sort of force recirculation over the feeding zone, I checked back. I kept checking in to see how things were coming along. And as you saw, that one coffee filter over here was completely gone. The one over here was pretty much on its way to being gone as well. And the reason I think that it was so popular was because I had put my worm chow all over those coffee filters, and it really did seem to cause a lot of action. I kept peeking in underneath to see what was happening there, and in addition to there always being a huge mound of worms on there coming up to nip off all that yummy worm chow, there was also a ton of springtails. And I almost thought that maybe I would even pick off the worms and, extract the paper so as to remove all of the springtails. So that was really what was going on in the back of my mind in terms of something that we might be able to do in here. Because even this one piece of plastic, for example, you can really see all the springtails hanging out on this thing. There's a whole lot of them, and this is really nothing compared to what I saw when I peeked under here. When those coffee filters were still intact, there were just tons and tons of springtails on here. So that was really my only motivation, was to get rid of that one cucumber that just looked really terrible and put some more of this out onto some replacement top covering paper, and then possibly use that as a way of just extracting a whole bunch of springtails from this material. So that's my game plan for here today. Yeah, look at that. I was curious to see how those cucumbers would be received over here on the edge. All we did was we took the cucumber, wrapped it up in some newspaper, and dropped it in here for them. And as you can see, besides the worms all coming out for that yummy cucumber, there's a whole lot of springtails within this material too. I'm assuming if we probe around over here in the older bin, we're going to see something very similar. Yep. Definitely a good turnout. And even a little bit of leftover paper. So that's really all I wanted to do, was just dump in replacement. Wow, even more worms over here. Dump in some replacement cucumber, reset the top covering with more worm chow, and then reset, but this time with the plastic. So to really try to get the springtail action kicking, and then possibly use that as a way to extract some of the springtails from these systems to just to lessen their numbers as we start driving these systems towards completion and possible harvest one of these days soon. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. I brought down some info about these systems to share with you, their ages and the number of times they had been fed. So the older bin is 295 days of age. The younger one, 260, fed 25 and 22 times. Before forgetting to share that with you, I figured I'd show it to you. And then besides that, another thing I forgot about was the fact that I do have a couple of coffee filters that could be deployed in here as feeding zone indicators, so we'll use them. Why not, right? And what do we have here? Even some more leftover paper, and it does seem like I'm noticing a whole bunch of seeds from the cucumber that they were fed last time. I'm surprised we didn't really spot much of that down in here, but I bet you it's in here somewhere. Looks like we've also got some mango. Yeah, look at that. Besides a lot of springtails in this mango seed, there's also a lot of worms hanging out. Just kind of cool to see. These are some pretty lively worms. They're fast movers. There's a whole lot of them in this mango seed. And, you know, I think there was one over here too, right? I wouldn't be surprised if there was a similar turnout, but no, not quite as interesting in that one. So let's go ahead and plop in that cucumber that they're getting. And since that piece of newspaper that I had originally thought we might use as our feeding zone indicator is not needed because we have coffee filters to serve that purpose, we can use these as sort of burrito wrappers to plop the cucumber into. So why don't we do it that way? It's a little bit fragile, so we'll just do a little fold over. We'll lay down the paper, plop in some cucumber chunks into each system, and that's going to be the extent of the feeding that they're getting today. Not a lot. Sort of similar to last time, although I think last time each system got an entire cucumber. This time they're just going to have to share a single cucumber. And it does seem like we're managing to divvy this cucumber up pretty fairly. So let's leave it at that. And I guess the other thing I was kind of curious of was, you know, are we kind of paving our ways? Are we kind of paving the way here for a really easy horizontal migration out of the compost? Based on what we saw when we unearthed that feeding zone, my guess would be yeah. So I'm wondering how things look over here on this far edge, and compared to what was over where the cucumber had been, there is a lot less worm action over here on the far edge, away from where the feedings had been. But even over here, I'm still seeing lots and lots of springtails. So I'm definitely liking the idea of possibly using the worm chow and the feeding zone indicator as a way to round up a whole lot of, springtails and extract them from these systems. Because for whatever reason, springtails have sort of become very prevalent in my systems, and I know a lot of people will criticize me for being down about that or not very into it, because springtails are a beneficial helper creature in the worm bins, but it would really be my personal preference to have far fewer of them, you know what I mean? I have no problem with them being in here helping and all that stuff, but I just don't want so many. And I don't think that's unreasonable. So if I could fish some of them out just by luring them together onto the feeding zone indicator with my worm chow, by setting things up here very similar to the way they were set up last time, then I think it'll be a good thing to have fewer springtails in here. So that's kind of what I'm after. I'm thinking, let's just return some material over the feeding zone, kind of examine how all of it looks. Anything that looks like it's belonging over where the action's going to be, let's move it over there and treat the rest of it as sort of close to being harvestable material. And I guess in my spreadsheet, I'm going to have to sort of juggle the numbers around to take away those 11 days of credit of foraging that I gave both of these systems ever since the last check-in, and really sort of pumpkin stem. And really just treat this as yet another feeding. In fact, I'm almost wondering if I even want to reclassify these as foraging anymore. I'm wondering if I'm going to want to come in and do another similar side feeding and just continue aerating this edge of the bin out here furthest away from the feeding zone, and then gradually transition to a migration, or almost, I don't know, I'm almost wondering if at some point I'll even decide to just treat the last feeding as the initiation of horizontal migration and skip the whole concept of foraging in these systems. I don't know. It's all semantics in the end, right? It doesn't matter, as long as in the end your worms are happy, you've got some nice compost out of the deal. And I guess if another of my objectives here is to reduce the number of springtails, then that will be another added plus, I think. So, all right, let's wind things up here and get these feeding zone indicators positioned over where we just gave them half a cucumber, certainly not a lot. And the worm chow also counts as part of the feeding too. And it definitely was interesting to peek in here and see so many springtails hanging out on this paper. And I do wonder if it was the springtails that nibbled away the coffee filter, or was it the worms, or maybe just a combination of both. One way or another, the coffee filters just got demolished over the past 11 days, and it had to be because of this worm chow. So that's more or less the way we left it last time. Last time, all we did after this was we came back in here with some pieces of paper. Previously we had just one piece of paper. This time we're coming in with two, but we're making it look very similar. And then now we'll come back in with something that I had added here after the last feeding off camera, which is just the plastic, which is intended to help moisture recirculate over the feeding area, over the worm chow, and I think, somewhere between the worm chow and the recirculating moisture, either one or the other, or possibly a combination of the both, I think that would have been the best explanation as to why we saw so many springtails out there. Well, we didn't see them when we first came in here, but I definitely saw them in that time between the last time and this time. So that's it for our check-in, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.